baby, it gets so hard. I sit and watch the rain that falls in my backyard. Sometimes, baby, it seems to me our situation ain't the way it used to be. Sometimes, baby, it gets so hard. I sit and watch the rain that falls in my backyard. Sometimes, baby, it seems to me our situation ain't the way it used to be.
Hello, friends. Hello, and welcome back to Warui Deshou's Stream of Thought, our public and free stream where we talk about anime and where Shadon, my lovely co-host, the hardest working man in pod business, tries to love anime, but it just doesn't love him back sometimes. I'm the Subtle Doctor. I'm back after an extended leave. Is more extended than I thought it would be. That's what she said. It was a vacation. It was work. Took me away from this podcast. It was a very busy season. And then last week, I had a bit of a dental emergency. I'll spare you the gory details, but it was quite painful. So I couldn't talk for 2 hours about science fiction anime. But enough from me. I'm here. But the star of the show this week is the chromiest dome, the guiltiest gear, the aforementioned hardest working man in the business of pods. It is Shadon. Shadon, how are you doing, my friend?
So last week you mentioned you were away, and I did the finale of Vivi, Fluorite Eyes song, which is now available, by the way, free for everyone to listen to. So you get to hear me spend 50 minutes deflating like a balloon over how bad that ending was. And I thought to myself, well, that was a pretty dire ending.
You didn't like
it? I did not care for it, no. And then Wonder Egg, completely, up on a, DMA or whatever, just slurs its words and yells, "Hold my beer," as it rushes in and face plants so hard, breaking every bone in its body. This was something. I can't recall the last time that you and I covered a show together where all of my goodwill was just so rapidly pissed away into the wind. And if you think I'm being unfair, and maybe that's just me saying that, I know that like I've usually poured scorn over like ratings on like streaming websites before. Lord knows I've been particularly critical of people giving stuff like Franks and Shield Hero like universal 5-star ratings. It made me sometimes think I was watching a different show than they were. But I think this week we seem to be simpatico on that because I had a look and I actually rewatched the final episode of Wonder Piracy, as in episode 12, not this episode or whatever you want to call this abomination that's been laid before us. And it had 5 stars as an average rating. And then get to episode 13, non-Funimation, it's now got an average of 3. And that is shocking considering that, like, when it comes to rating systems on like social media and or rather streaming websites, and they have like, the 5-star thing, people grade on like a curve on that. So you'll very rarely see it get below 4. Like it's either all 1s or 4 to 5. Like no one uses the whole buffalo here. But it turned out that, a lot of people were quite displeased by this. If you want to take a 3 out of 5 rating as an indication of like consensus-based scorn. But no, I did not care for this ending at all. I did not think back when we finished episode 12 that what we'd get 3 months later was this dire, basically. But here we are. We're going to talk about it.
That's our show, folks. Join us next week.
This is why the docs is now in the house again, because I need to talk it out with someone, with a qualified anime professional, to just get my pain out there, get my suffering out there for everyone to hear. But yeah, this was a real shit show.
Well, Shadon.
You liked it, didn't you?
You asked me earlier.
You liked it. You liked it.
You asked me earlier. Off mic. Not off mic. Off pod. What did you think of it? Because, of course, you're posting memes to Twitter of people throwing their televisions out the window and Simpsons, saying urged kill rising. You're on record. You're out there.
How about you go on record then? Go on, do it.
Shadon,
Do it, you fucker. Go on.
I'm gonna zag. I enjoyed it. But I have a number of caveats to lay out here. Okay, first of all, Johnny in chat.
What you cannot see, whether or not you're listening to this in podcast form or watching the VOD of it, is the laser sight that's trained on the back of Doc's head right now. That's the only explanation I have, short of mind control by aliens, as to explain this. But okay. Please do explain your zag, my good sir.
Here's going to explain my zag, my hot take on the WEP special. I will not get out, Go-Go. I will argue for my position, tenuous as it may be. So there were some things that, for me, experiencing this now, 3 months after watching the anime, that were positives and pluses for me as far as the experience of this show goes, that I don't think are going to be positives for everyone. I think that people that are going to marathon this show, starting with episode 1 of the TV series through the special, are going to have a lot to dislike about this. But for me, having not touched the material in 3 months, I actually quite enjoyed the first half of this. A lot of the story sanded off, but like an okay summary of events and some cool moments. Like I was reminded of how much I loved, I taking care of other I as kind of, what you could read as this like metaphor for parenting your inner child, almost like that part of you that's anxious and weak and is always kind of wanting to curl up in the fetal position when it comes to facing life's obstacles, like this other part of you, this other self. It's almost like this physical representation of what happens phenomenologically with some people, certainly with me. Like, it's like there's a me inside of me that has to go like, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. You got to get up and face this. You know what I mean? So like all that stuff, all the summative part of this, I quite liked. Now, I think what I did not come into this expecting and like holding the show to is to be this sort of conclusion that would wrap everything up quite neatly and would explain all the threads that need to be explained, while also kind of providing an emotionally resonant finale. I think it did okay in terms of providing the emotionally resonant finale. And I know that, friend of the pod, Emily Rand, was of the belief that this special kind of went the worst possible direction in that it was focused on the wrong things, like the mechanics of the show and the like explaining the world building and things like that, rather than like the character stories and the emotional stuff. And I mean, I totally like, I remember at the time saying we don't need that from the episode, the special. And I mean, I still think that's a valid opinion. In some ways, they sort of wrote themselves into a corner. Like there were so many unanswered mechanical questions. Not that this answered them all by any means. That they had to like, I don't know, do something there. And they did a little bit. And I guess what I'm saying is not that I loved this or think that it's not even the thing that I wanted. What I wanted was for it to be an impactful conclusion that like tied really tightly into the end of episode 12 and finished it up. That's what I wanted the most from this. This was not that, but I still think that despite it not being that, I don't think it was straight up bad. I would say that it was enjoyable, that it had some nice moments, that it wasn't great, but that it was like, that it was pretty all right. You know what I mean? Like it's I even hesitate to say good in some ways, because like I was let down by certain parts of it.
He's slipping here. This is a man who's gripping on
listen. No.
But still, I'm kidding. Carry on.
No, listen. Throw your darts. It's totally fair. I would underline the distinction between good and enjoyable. Because again, I do think people were expecting a lot from this, and I think if you are and you go into it expecting all those things, it's absolutely going to disappoint you. But maybe if you kind of look at it as a separate thing on its own merits, maybe you could derive some go messing with me in chat. You could derive some enjoyment out of it. And I think I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it more than I thought I would. Because like it was so hard not to be affected by all the opinions about it, because I did not watch it. Like, I mean, I wasn't spoiled, but like the reaction was all over my Twitter timeline about how bad people thought this was. And so I think that benefited me in some ways, and that my expectations for it lowered in terms of the quality. And I think they might have been so low that I was like, okay, wow. So this as sort of a coda to the show, providing some kind of interesting glimpses into what happens after, getting to see the characters again and getting to be reminded of the good things I liked about this. I didn't think it was too bad. I did not think it was a waste of time or anything like that. I enjoyed myself, even though this is not the greatest anime ever made. This is not the conclusion that I think the show deserved, but I think it was still nonetheless an enjoyable watch.
We'll get down to brass tacks soon enough. I God, I
Fried
think though
chicken.
you are
Fried chicken.
I think though you are right in pointing out that depends on one's expectations going into this. Like I went in having heard a little bit of noise here and there about it being like, a complete dumpster fire. And I thought it can't be that bad. And then I thought, no, this really is pretty terrible. I hate it. But I will also say that the recap, the recap that takes 3/5 of the episode, God, it doesn't like the recap itself is perfectly functional, but I have to point out that it's also completely and utterly perfunctory. Because while I appreciate your perspective in saying that, hey, I haven't engaged with this material for all that time, this isn't the case of like this material is unavailable, obscure.
Oh,
I mean, they had 3 months to wrap this story up, and I would argue, as we'll go into soon enough, that they probably should be given more time, rather than being given this short amount of time. Because what original material we did get clearly seems like a rush job to me, and indeed there is confirmation of that where they were doing key animation or second pass key animation on this 5 days before airing, and I suppose I could just put it out there right now that whatever else I have to say about Wonder Egg Priority as a whole or this finale feels immaterial relative to the fact that you and I were discussing in the original pods about the working conditions that this show was made under, the fact that it put some guy in the hospital not once, but twice. I mean, when I think of occupational hazards for like Game Point Hospital, I think of like being a fucking lion tamer, or living target practice dummy. I don't think that it should be about making anime should do that, but that happened, and so me in my naive little milk and honey world thought to myself, oh, they've got 3 months, they'll have more enough time to comfortably get this done with no issues. So they're not doing it week on week, and they still had to rush it at the end, not to the same degree that they did previously, mind you, but they were still rushing it, and I feel like anything else I want to say about the actual content of this particular special feels utterly pointless relative to that fact, and the fact that even though they were rushing it, 3/5 of it was still recap material, existing footage. That is a joke. That is an absolute joke of production and planning. I mean, I think between this and the recent revelations about Mappa's own basically criminal practices, my tolerance, already low though it was for this sort of stuff, has just evaporated. I don't feel like in some way that I want to even talk about what happened is because it just feels pointless relative to the fact that people actually made this are still being fucking exploited, still having their best years of their lives whether burned away in service of this, and for what? This not even really full-length episode, if we count just the original material, that only adds more questions than it answers, has some outright baffling revelations that don't add anything to the story, in my opinion, including one I think is outright appalling and contrary to the actual content of the show as a whole.
There's some weird shit.
To the point where I think that a fucking YouTube right-wing commentator had written this as bad fanfic of Wonder Egg. Or if you had people, because I know that people have been apparently defending. Yeah,
I think I know where you're going with that, but please continue.
I know, for example, that people have been apparently defending Sawaki. You remember him, of course, the teacher.
Yeah, the creepiest, worst character. Yeah. No, yeah. And I mean, okay, just in case anyone new is popping in, Shadon, you make this point all the time. Our criticisms of this character's behavior and stuff like that are not us saying, hey, guess what? He shouldn't be in the story and the people that wrote him are bad or anything like that. It's these kinds of touchy subjects and scummy characters that absolutely serve a narrative purpose and make stories work and, are oftentimes a big part of stories about trauma, which should be and need to be told.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the show is is it glorifying him in any way either. And I'm baffled. Like, I remember getting so upset when we had Emily on, like, just absolutely baffled that there are people that go to the mat for this guy when he is just clearly a problematic creeper of a dude.
I mean, I'll just speak for myself to go back to, I think it might have been episode 10, I can't recall, where, you know, his abomination of a painting is revealed. The thing that should put him on a watch list.
What is it called? Like, the name of it is just so
Latent
gross.
Heat. Latent Heat.
It's, I mean, how? How? Oh my goodness. I forgot it was called Latent Heat. That is just such an indictment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna put it here, right? If you were watching this show and you didn't clock, there's something wrong about this. Again, I think to myself, are you watching the same show as me? I don't mean that to be disrespectful, but I really can't get it, because speaking as a speaking as, like, you know, a childless, you know, curmudgeon that I am, if I had a daughter who's I's age who was in such a situation where she felt compelled or desired to go and meet with someone of Sawaki's age to view a painting of him that he had made at an art gallery at like 10 o'clock at night, to the point where she gets dressed up in adult clothing and high heels, and he, you know, she turns up there, she doesn't tell me where she's going. I know him and he knows me. And when she arrives there, his reaction is not, "What are you doing here without your dad or your mum? I'm going to call her and let her know where you are." Mm-hmm. I mean, he may not have broken the law per se, but for crying out loud, if we use they have to break the law excuse, then that's naive. That's like saying that racism doesn't exist because there's legal equality. It doesn't mean that in practice it's being applied. I'm sorry, but the evidence is so there that I just think people must have horse blinders on if they can't see it. But that's not the relevant necessarily right now to this particular episode. Although I think, if anything, it's going to give people like the argument that he was right all along. Because you know what you said before? You know what you said before, right? About how characters like those do exist to serve a narrative purpose. Mm-hmm. I 100% agree. But I was not expecting this episode to suddenly make the story about him in a way that vindicated his trauma, as opposed to that of the actual characters in the fucking show.
That was a very dislikable turn. I was very surprised. Like,
I had to rewind. I was shocked.
Yeah,
I was shocked, but
that was not good.
We'll get to that later though. Because I should mention, actually, we've had some Patreon questions fly in just this second, as a matter of fact. Yeah, last minute
questions. Well, that's fantastic. So, hey, out there, if you're, you know, wanting to ask us questions and get, you know, more than one line typed in chat that goes away very quickly, you know, get thorough answers. That's one of the benefits we have on our Patreon, that you can head over to patreon.com/Warui Deshou. Sign up. We have 3 budget-friendly tiers. And right now we are having several new patrons because it's time for voting on like the new shows that we're going to cover in our second and third stream slots for this season. So if you are interested in deciding what anime we talk about, retro and new, I should say, head on over to the Patreon, check it out. So what do the patrons have to ask?
So the first question we have is from Kate Rose, and it goes, "What did you want from the special episode? What, if any, part did you like from it?" Do I make the easy joke and say I was glad it was over?
The credits.
Too easy. Okay, I suppose I can answer the first point by basically just picking up like where the show ends, which is, I agree with what our previous guest Emily Rand said, which was that it felt like it was a good personal conclusion for Ai in episode 12 as it was.
Totally.
She came to terms with like her feelings towards Sawaki, her history of Koito, and indeed with herself. Like, that is very literal, given that she sees a version of herself that died in an alternate timeline, that committed suicide in an alternate timeline. Oh, by the way, because I forgot to mention this, content warning, of course, for discussion of suicidal ideation, everything that Wonder Egg has covered before. A lot of it just generally being shit now, but I don't know whether or not that counts as a content warning or not. Anyway, so the lingering question that hung over the entire show was Frill at that point. And I suppose also to a lesser extent,
moths that were named
yeah,
after, that were mostly named after punctuation, except for the one with the really long name.
The one that had like a Reddit troll handle or something like that for a name.
Yes.
But so the remaining two questions were really about Frill and also to a lesser extent Neru, because we never got to see Neru reconcile with her sister. Like she wasn't given the same scenes as the other characters were where they met. There was a very brief insert in episode 12 where we got to see Neru like hiding under sheets because she must have gone through that experience, but we never see it. And so I had two things that I wanted this special to do, which I also expected to be at least an hour and a half long. It should have been a film to cover the necessary material, in my opinion. Was one, have like I properly encounter and deal with Frill, how that happens. I mean, obviously it would be the power of her, like, you know, empathy. The fact that she is friendly, she is the sunshine, you know, like of the group. She is like warmed up all their lives. She can probably do the same with Frill, that sort of thing. And also Neru as well. Have her wrap up her little story, deal with her sister, all that sort of stuff. Bring the Akkas to a conclusion. Like, we learned that they wanted to save Hinami, for example, their daughter. Wrap all that up. So those three things specifically. Those
you were
three
disappointed,
things
weren't you? You didn't get anything you wanted.
Yeah, well, when do I ever? But that at least when it comes to anime anyway. But that's my point though. Like those three things you could have easily done that in an hour and a half of original material. Got none of that. In fact, the Neru one actually gets only more complicated. They threw some stuff in there that just completely made me almost spit my drink out. Because I was just like, why? Why are you doing this?
It was very
what
odd.
does it? I'll get to that later. So if I want to say if I liked any part of it, the girls doing karaoke was all right for the brief moment they sung the ending.
Sure.
That was nice, I guess. I like the scene in which I has a heart to heart with a mother. Even though it was nowhere near as in depth I would have liked. Yeah. But it was there at least.
I think that's one of the things about this is that, like, if you exclude the recap from your evaluation, there is remarkably little to judge. And so if you liked a few things, you end up liking like a third of the material. So that's part of why I'm not as down on it, barring a couple of really strange narrative choices as you might be.
Yeah, I mean, I liked the nice animation cuts in the recap, but I don't know if that necessarily should count, given that they're just reused material. But anyway, whatever. I didn't like a lot of it. And what I did like was very ephemeral, very brief, and didn't overall actually contribute to the show, really, to what it was meant to be about. The main things that actually do contribute to the show all make it substantially worse, in my opinion. So yeah, over to you, Doc, on that one. What did you want from the special episode, and what, if any of it, did you like?
Well, so, like I was saying before, what I wanted originally was, you know, something with some emotional heft that gave me that same sense of satisfaction and closure, which is not to say, again, everything is tied up in a neat bow. You can have closure without that. But to have some closure with some of the other cast members. Like, I was sort of hoping for a Rika special, if I'm honest with you. Just do the Rika for
I'd be okay with that.
half an hour or whatever. That'd be dope. Now, I mean, I do agree with you that a film would be great. I mean, like you said, they would need a lot more time, and that's just, I mean, that would, you know, if we're just like wishing for things, like that'd be sick. You know, if like the people involved were like, here's 18 months, make a 90-minute movie or whatever.
If you think I'm being unfair or like being full of wishful thinking for that to happen, did we not cover the Given movie at the start of this year?
Yeah, we did.
Same. That I feel like serves as the perfect framework for what I wanted to see, because the Given movie was not about Mafuyu or Oniyama. I can't believe I remember their names. It was about Getsu and whatever. You know what I'm talking about. Gunshow. His name is Gunshow.
Yeah, it was Akihiko, wasn't it?
It might have been. It was about him, Getsu, and Axel Lowe, because that's what he looks like. No, I'm kidding.
You remember those names. That's fantastic.
Yeah, but yeah, that framework for me works because it's about those other characters, and that also aligns with what I wanted to see from One Drag, which was it would be about Frill and Nehru, the characters whom we have not yet had the full exploration of. It got produced on a reasonable schedule. I mean, Given ended before the pandemic, if I recall correctly. Or am I wrong on that?
No. You're
I
right.
did.
Mm-hmm. That was a 2019 show, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure.
So they had a full year at a minimum to do that. So if Given can be afforded that kind of opportunity to have a film follow-up or a 2-episode follow, because it wasn't really a full-length film, it was more like 2 episodes, but I'm splitting hairs about that. Point being, if it can have that, why can't Wonder Egg? And the reason is because the people running this are fucking slave drivers, and I hate them.
That is, that's the big difference, right?
Although much of my ire, I admit, is not necessarily just the people producing the show, but also the writers. Because for all, that I can complain about, the fact that they had to do, 3/5 of it as a recap, the fact that some of the animation is a bit stilted, I'm not going to, actually hold that necessarily against the people who are making the show. They didn't have a decision or, a say in how it was going to be made. What I do have, who I do want to nail to the wall is the person or people actually writing the script for this finale, specifically the new material. Because that's where the biggest, acts of self-harm for the show come from. And I'm sorry, but a script is a doddle, relatively speaking, to tap out versus actually animating. You get a word processor, you hit the keyboard, you maybe do a little word count, and maybe you don't double line space it. Job done. Moving on.
Shadon, writing is easy. Shadon from 2021.
Whoever decided to write in the fact that, spoilers by the way, Nehru is an AI.
Holy shit!
Yeah. Doc's reaction there was my own when I watched this, and that is exactly my point, though. Who
just parachuted into the writers' room and was like, "I know what you guys have been doing, but what if this fucking shit?" What? I was truly baffled by that. It didn't, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go with this, and then kind of nothing happens.
Nothing
happens with it. Probably the greatest single moment of the whole episode actually happens when I throws her phone out the window. That's like a meme for the ages. Just her throwing her cell phone out a 3-story window.
It's me looking at the latest right-wing social media site. But such a joke,
man. Okay, but to finish answering Kate's question, so it talked about what I wanted, broadly speaking. What did I like? I mean, at the risk of repeating myself, which I do on this podcast anyway. I did like the recap. It added to my experience of it, the thing overall. I know that's not going to be the same for everyone. I can only speak to my own experience here. So I liked that part. And I think of the new material, what I enjoyed about it was, rather than the structure of the plot from a big picture point of view, I think what I was able to get into the most and feel at home with is the moment to moment stuff, the moment to moment direction, the naturalistic dialogue, which is still there. The animation I thought was pretty good in certain scenes. I mean, it wasn't lavishly animated the whole way through in the new material, but I thought there were some good moments. I didn't think anybody, this is going to sound weird, I don't think anybody acted out of character. I mean, again, the authors fundamentally changed some things about the characters, which was weird. But I think, I would look at each individual scene abstracted from the whole and think, this is a good scene. You know, I like what's happening here. But I just don't think it was in service of something that lived up to what the rest of the show offered. Like in toto, what it was driving to ended up being not that much of anything. But I mean, just because there's not a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that I wanted, yeah, I didn't think it was a total bad time. So what's our next question?
Enough. Next question. These next two questions come from Johnny Racken. First of which is, what was the purpose of Frill's friends who killed the girls' pets, and where did they go? Well, I know exactly where they went. The cutting room floor. The more serious answer I can give,
God,
at least the first part of that, is I think Frill made them as basically her own like twisted like interpretations of what like girl friends like of that age would be, because I think you can kind of think of it like as a kind of twisted like downward spiral of like, how to put, obscenity, I suppose, because Frill herself was created by the Akkas, and whatever the finale might have to say by revealing that Nehru is also an AI, which has its own implications, and I'll get to that later. Like, her upbringing was from them. They want her to be the idealized version of a girl, and unfortunately that came with consequences, such as the fact she wanted them all to herself.
Yeah.
And so I think that when Frill created those for like moth, like butterfly, I don't know, Shin Megami Tensei monsters,
they
whatever
really
you want to call
are,
them,
aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, I think when she created those, like, I think it's kind of like a multiplying X Factor effect on her upbringing, like being twisted for her own experiences with the Akkas, what they've done to her, what she's done to others. So they're meant to just be like, you know, I just need a friend, really. But her concepts of what a friend would look like and what it would do and how it acts are the result of her own twisted personality, which is a latent element of the Akka's upbringing and their treatment of her. But as for where they went, season 2? Season 2? I ain't watching it. Fuck you, show.
2. Oh, come on.
Watch it.
You would watch a season 2. Yes, you would.
No, I
There's
wouldn't.
a full season 2.
No, I wouldn't. Simply because I don't trust them, again, not to put the people creating it through the fucking gristle mill.
So, I mean, so is this are you publicly boycotting Mappa?
Might as well at this point. Fuck him.
Honestly, it's a worthy cause.
But I mean, like, on top of that, like, the writing decisions in the new material they brought along here, they don't, like, that shattered my trust in that as well. So, I'm done. Wonder Egg, it was perfectly okay by the end of episode 12. I like the conclusion it gave then. I did not care one iota for its production, how it came to be, how it came to exist, and what it ultimately did to the people creating it. Again, Guy Point Hospital twice. There's no defending that. There's no explaining it. There's no excusing it. So I've got no interest in like going back to the show if it's produced in the exact same way again. And even if it was suddenly produced under a more utopian ideal of, hey, we're going to give you all the proper time in the world, all the resources you need. We're not going to put him in the hospital again. We pinky swear. The script like still fucks up the original material in this in such a way that I'm like, that's it. You've broken like my sense of trust in your ability to handle this material, what you're trying to go for here, to such an extent that I don't want to go back. I'm done. This was what you had to put out with 3 months' work, and it's pathetic, to be quite honest.
I mean, you'll get no disagreement from me on any of that. I do think, this is sort of a devil's bargain that anime fans have to make that are aware of industry conditions. Because, I mean, while not every studio, of course, is sending its people to the hospital multiple occasions for the same show, not every studio is mismanaged as badly as Mappa appears to be. There's still so much bad shit everywhere, from Ghibli to Mappa to, I mean, every, like, you know, nobody's paid well. I think, you know, we have precious few in models that do it right. I think Kyoto Animation is like the one beacon I can think of that seems to be like a responsible studio. But like, to me, this is sort of a, like, you should understand anytime I'm engaging with anime and like talking about it, making content about it, in the background is like, I know, like, this, the way that the sausage was made is awful. And we should do what we can do to help change that if we are more than simply like consumers. Like if we care about, like, you know, anime and where it's going, and, you know, have human empathy for those artists that are struggling, those craftspeople that are struggling. So no, yeah. I mean, I'm with you. So that's why I think I would be down to watch season 2. Like, again, because I just, it would be so difficult. I mean, I would never watch anything, you know, if I didn't compartmentalize it that way. And maybe I have the wrong approach. Like, I mean, I could see some people out there being like, well, you know, you fucking suck for doing that. You're a monster.
I'll be fair as well. I suppose I should also be self-critical here and say, like, I mean, the production issues of Wonder Egg have been going on, like, even before this special. And the thing that's broken the camel's back for me has also been the writing. And I think, like, you know, maybe I should be fair in pointing out, isn't it a bit like stupid of me to, like, you know, be, oh, well, as long as the writing's good, I'll accept it being made in poor conditions. And again, maybe I need to reevaluate that, much the same as you mentioned you might do for your own perspective. But in our defense, we do, like, you know, provide some of our revenue to the new anime making projects. You know, we put our money where our mouths are. So again, whether or not that assuages or like validates that, I don't know. But I have to admit though, like, between this and the Mappa thing, my enthusiasm for anime as a medium in general has been a bit dulled, a bit dimmed as of like the past 2 weeks.
It's been rocked. Yeah, I should note, Yukinon corrected me. This is not Mappa. That's maybe why you were like, what is he talking about boycotting Mappa? I meant Cloverworks.
Yeah.
they are the Wonder Egg studio.
I thought you meant just as a general thing, as a side.
No, just like, were you boycotting all of Cloverworks output, you know, as the Wonder Egg managing studio? But yeah, no, I mean, you know, so we're all hypocrites to some degree, I suppose.
Yeah.
But what was I gonna say? Yukinon says that Cloverworks were juggling animators in between making this episode and Shadow's House. And yeah, I mean, from the production side of things, you know, this is it seems to be a bit of a train wreck from the story. So
they're gonna need to hire fucking Vishnu, the Indian goddess, like, with all the arms at this point, to start making their shit. Honestly, that's about the best thing I can say.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I just don't think so. So I guess, like, the final thing I'll say in this is that I don't think stopping watching, at least when it comes to me, is going to solve anything. You know, as like donating money, spreading awareness, they can do more with that. But, like, you know, this stuff is all a moving target. You know, I mean, they, like, you know, things could get worse. Who knows? I don't want to tie myself down to any particular stances. But this is just what I've been up to this point. So, but back on course, I guess, with Wonder Egg, the content here.
So the question was, what was the purpose of Frill's friends who killed the girl's pets, and where did they go? So my suggestion was Twisted Friends and cutting room floor. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, the whole Frill character ended up being a bit of a cul-de-sac. Like, I think I mentioned in our episode 11 talk that there were some interesting sort of things metaphorically that you could extrapolate from the Frill character. And I mean, I think that's still there for you, you know, but like, these butterflies and dragonflies and what have you that killed the buddies ended up being sacrificed to like the time constraints. Because I mean, I think if you're going to do a 45-minute episode, even if it was without recap and more kind of competently planned and projected out, you'd still have to leave some threads dangling. And I feel like Emily specifically on our podcast mentioned that she did not care if that thread was left dangling, the butterfly people. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it was any great loss that it didn't get explained. But I am curious because, like, I actually don't know. I mean, I think your explanation is as good as any. Like, there were, like, facets of Frill's personality or, like, shortcomings or experiences or whatever that were like kind of given a life of their own. I think that's interesting, but I mean, we'll just never know, you know, because it was never fleshed out.
Yeah.
And speaking of like the buddies, the upgrades, they play this really kind of interesting role in this story, thinking back on it. Because I remember at the beginning when they first showed up, the beginning of the animal friends coming, you know, we were thinking, well, this is part of the theme of the show, critiquing gacha. You know, you have like the power up, you know, the upgrade or whatever, the microtransaction to, you know, power you up or whatever so you can get farther, so you can spend more money, like something that grows your attachment to the game. And I feel like that the end of the show and certainly this special episode, I mean, it really like did not have much to say, thinking back on it, about gacha. And so it makes me wonder if that was something we were just reading into, like too much into it, like it being like really critical of it. And maybe not. I mean, maybe people have a different interpretation, because at the end I does go running back to the gachapon machine. But
Yep.
the animal guys and gals, like, I don't know, it was so interesting that the girls were so attached to them. That like them clearing the game and losing their animal friend, like it was such a harrowing experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, what did you make of that? Like, remind me if you can.
I can't comment on it right now because I didn't rewatch the episodes. I've commented on the animal companions previously.
Right.
All I will say is that when you said about, like, you know, they end the game and lose them, all I could think of was, like, imagine getting to the end of Pokemon the animated series and James just blows Pikachu's head off with a shotgun. That's kind of the mood.
So mean.
Yeah. I have nothing to really say on, because they weren't relevant to the subjects at hand, which is this finale.
I know. Yeah. And I mean, I remember we said that it was almost like they were like metaphors for the personality, you know, like the turtle shell for Rika, you know, because
The
she
chameleon, yeah.
hides herself, the chameleon, yeah, that sort of thing. But just the attachment to those is really, I don't know, I thought that was interesting. It's something I'd like to think about some more, because, you know, that's like why Momo didn't want any part of continuing the game, and it's why Rika was so scared, you know, because she thought she was going to die because Manon got harpooned.
Well, they all got fed the you know, the flesh of their animals.
So gross, man.
And so whether or not, and I think whether or not they were attached to them or not, like that would still like utterly like traumatize you.
Mm.
And indeed, we saw that in like the episode. It was actually episode 12, if I recall, because I rewatched that, where we see like the scenes of them, like, you know, all like shaking and hugging themselves, like they've got the fear of death in them now, basically. But yeah, I mean, the animal stuff, like, I don't have much to add to it, because I've spoken about it before on the other podcasts, and doesn't come up really in this one, apart from the recap, and I don't care about the recap, so I don't know, maybe they'll get Blastoise and they'll solve everything, I don't know, maybe a Dragonite, you pick the fucking Pokemon, I don't know. Anyway, all right, Final question. Well, actually, not the final question. We actually do have this one from Rackham, and then we have another from Emily Rand, who we mentioned before. But we're going to answer that at the end once we've spoken about our other talking points, because it would be more appropriate to do so then. But anyway, the final question from Rackham is, do you think the show having the girls drift apart was the right choice for the show to make? Do you want to tackle that one first, Doc, or shall I? Because I have an immediate answer to that.
Well, give your immediate answer.
Okay. I don't think that's an inviolate idea. I think that it's a fine idea to do if you do it right. But this like finale, the original material, is boneless enough that it's difficult to get a sense of how long it's been since they last saw each other. It's also difficult to get a sense if the reason they're drifting apart is just because of time, circumstance, or the trauma they've been through. Like, so for me, I don't mind the idea of having them drift apart. That can work. I mean, this might sound like a strange comparison, but you of course know of It, the series with Mr. Float Down Here Pennywise in them. You know, the film series.
I've never seen any of them, but I know of it, yes.
Well, the thing is, like, in that series, of course, you have the two films, one of which is when they're kids and one of which is when they're adults. Now, a lot of that is pretty fucked up, but I think, like, that central core idea there of we've dealt with or tried to tackle a threat and we weren't ready for it, and we come back later and we can do it again, can work. I'm not even saying that, like, we need to see, like, Rika, etc. as adults in whatever theoretical follow-up this might come up as. But nonetheless, like, the idea has been done elsewhere in fiction in similar circumstances with kids fighting an extra, like, dimensional threat, not too dissimilar from this. So I don't think it's a bad choice. I think the bad choice itself, though, is just how they chose to go about it, which is to make it a footnote or a bullet point rather than the emotional core of the story they were trying to tell.
Yeah, I feel like they wanted to make it the core of this last episode. But, like, I mean, there's just not enough footage.
Boneless.
Not enough there, you know? I agree. So I was going to say, I also, I mean, as much as, I derived enjoyment from seeing the girls together as friends, there was something also enjoyable about, like, kind of a more, kind of quiet, melancholic, like, side to the show. Because, we had a lot of really just trauma, like, it burns, scraping my inside, like that stuff. And then, the joys of friendship. But this was like I thought that there was a nice kind of tone to those melancholic scenes. And like you said, I don't mind the idea. I just love to know kind of what it was going for. You know what I mean? Is it again about, like, the game and, like, I don't know, saying something about friendships made in that way? Is it, like, about the sacrifices that they needed to make to help their friends come back to life? Because they did end up coming back to life, like, it in a, that this was a thing that I'm curious how you felt about this, like, because in the show, I remember feeling just a little bit deflated by the fact that, like, the girls appear for a moment as almost like an apparition and then they go away. That's it. That is absolute. That's it. That's all that they win. No, I wasn't really believing they were going to come back to life and everything was going to be happy and everything, but I was just like, feels like there should be something more. And there was more here. There was a little bit more on the bone for this. And I thought it was interesting that, like, the girls came back to life and they didn't remember, the egg crew that brought them back.
They don't remember the people that, they knew that brought them back. So, okay, my thoughts on this very quickly. Much like we said about the idea of the girls drifting apart, I like this idea because it reminds me in a way of what happens at the end of Magica Magica. In that, yeah, you know, everyone gets to go about their lives.
Can we
But
watch
of
that
course,
show for the podcast already? We talk about it
at
so much.
at some point we will. At some
I haven't
point,
seen it in like 10 years at least.
me neither. But anyway,
Anyway.
the point being is, I think that the idea is sound because it has kind of the best of both worlds in that it doesn't invalidate like the idea of grief and acceptance and moving on and healing, but it also allows those girls to have another chance at life. The problem, the problem I have with it as presented here is again also much the same as I said about the idea of the girls drifting apart, and there's not enough to it. The most we get is with I, but even the explanation that the Akkas give is told like secondhand from her.
Yeah.
And I can envision a scene in my brain, and this is again me like, you know, what would I do differently? All arrogance included with that, which is like she asks them, oh, why does Koito not remember me? And they explain, and that then leads to her having to emotionally deal with that. That she fought so hard to save Koito, has done so, but they are no longer friends, may never be friends again. How does she cope with that? What happens? What's the drama, the emotional core of this? Don't get any of that. Not really. Like, I has a little bit in the corridor, but that's about it.
Like an appetizer, yeah.
Rika briefly mentions Chiemi, or I think it was.
Chiemi, it was.
And one way, like, you know, she mentions, I think, I can't remember her name. Like,
she started dating a boy, right? Her person.
Footnotes. That's all it is. And then Neru and Iru, like, well, that's its own can of worms, basically, at this point. But
it is quite the can of worms.
Yeah, that
and
like,
what's her face? The psychologist or whatever.
Oh,
what is her name?
Kosabuki.
Coco Mungus. No, Kotobuki. Okay. Yeah.
Were you about to say Coco Monkey?
No, I don't know what I was gonna say.
The beloved mascot of Kellogg's, like,
yes,
you know, making AIs and fucking up timelines. I can believe it. Fucking Coco.
I don't know what I was gonna say.
Jesus fucking Christ.
God.
All right. Do you have anything to add to that question about the girls drifting apart being the right choice or not for the show?
Well, I mean, not really. I mean, I think I said what I wanted to say. I mean, I agree with you that it was not a bad idea. It just needed what was there was good. You know, I just wanted more of it and to see where it was going and kind of like have some kind of definitive statement or allusion, at least, like what is that in service of the drifting apart?
Yeah.
You know, it's unrelated, but the Akkas really just get off too easy in this show. You know what I mean? I think that's a thing.
Hey, welcome back.
I think that's a thing that we talked about at the end of episode 12 with Emily. We're like, okay, we want to see the Akkas get their due. It's like nothing.
Their reaction actually is kind of perplexing. It's like, oh, do you want to go buy snacks? I'm like, they've been through the egg game. They're here to fight, you know, Frill's, like, you know, Powerpuff Girl quartet, you know, and then fight Frill herself and, like, stop the temptation of death. Why the fuck does the egg game even matter anymore, apart from the convenient need for, I to do it to save Neru, apparently? But to them, they wouldn't have it. Oh, fuck it, never mind. I'll just like, my head will just literally just fall off at this point trying to explain this shit. But you are 100% right with your original point, which is they do get off easy. Fucking tech bro wankers, the pair of them.
Bro, it's true.
They are.
They really are. Like, it's wild, man. Okay. I guess that's all of our questions.
But now we'll come back to Emily Vans at the end. For now. Right then. So I suppose we have to actually talk about some stuff now as well, other than that. And that means I'm just going to dive right into it. And I'm going to talk about Sawaki's revelation about Koito and just get this fucking, like, you know, absolutely, like, I don't even know. I'm struggling to come up with the words for it because it is one of the most tone-deaf own goals of a story I've seen in a long time. And I need to explain how this works because when I first watched it and came away from the finale, like, I spent a day thinking about it, and I actually misplaced where this fell in the story because I thought it was originally in the recap. but it's not. It's in the new material, but it's presented in the same way as the recap, where it is narrated by him. And my understanding of this, which could be wrong, I freely admit my fallibility here, is that this is what he actually said to Ai when she asked him why Koiso died
that
at
is
the art
so
gala.
interesting. I did not make that connection. That's
my guess, because there is a specific callback. There is a specific reminder of her asking him that question, then cutting away. But I have problems with this, as you no doubt have guessed. I have many problems with it.
Yeah.
So
this was a nightmare of a writing decision, in my opinion.
This was honestly, they'd have done better by setting the scripts on fire, in my opinion. Now, I need to also say something right here and right now, which is this: the story that Sawaki relates, that of a female student of him, a male teacher, falsely accusing him of rape, sexual assault, etc.
Yeah, the girl who cried rape.
Yep, that is not an invalid story to tell. I'm not going to be a hypocrite and claim that you can have the kind of stories where, what happens in Wundreg, or what was presented in Wundreg until that point, when we are empathizing with the trauma, and also hating on the exploitation and societal pressures of young women, all that sort of stuff that we've covered in our previous podcast. I would be a hypocrite if I said that I was okay with that, but not okay with stories about where that happens to men. Because it does happen, and it's horrible when it happens. It will fucking ruin someone's life forever. I'm not going to downplay that. I'm not going to say you can't have that story. But you cannot have that story when the story has already been decided for 12 episodes to be about the thing I just mentioned, which is about emphasizing and examining the trauma of women, and particularly young women, in a society that will often exploit them and abuse them in various overt and covert ways. You can't suddenly U-turn to that, because it completely and utterly deflates the original point. Because now we've introduced ambiguity within the scope of this story. Oh, maybe all of the women that we've encountered before, all of them, were actually just over-exaggerating the abuse of the people that they, became the Wonder Monsters.
He was a wonder killer, or the parallel version of him, anyway.
Yeah. So that's the first thing I can point out there. It makes all of the other testimonies that have been given suspect by implication.
Yeah.
Because it turns out that actually Koiso didn't even kill herself; she just slipped.
Right.
That's apparently. Right. Now, as Gogo Type Robert has mentioned in the chat, she doesn't believe that he's being truthful, and the show believes he's truthful, but she doesn't agree. I don't think he's being truthful either. But the question I would then ask is, as she's rightly pointed out, why does the show not examine that? Why does the show not bring that into question? Why is it presented as a narration that is then given as fact?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, if this is meant to be unreliable narration, then we have to relitigate all kinds of things that, I just think that this, if it is an unreliable narrator movement, I don't think it serves the story very well. And
I think it handicaps it.
Frankly, I don't think it is an unreliable. I didn't take it as that. It seemed to me like, I did not want to learn the truth of what happened. She had made peace, and then, oh look, this is what happens when you really want to go after the truth of what happened. You learn this awful thing that, like you said, just totally undercuts everything that this show is about up to this point, and had really succeeded in doing. Like, the one thing that you could really latch onto, narratively speaking, rather, aesthetically, I think we get a lot done right, but narratively, man, the show nails exactly what you said about illustrating.
For the most part,
trauma.
I think some of it's a bit wonky, particularly with Momoe's story, but we've discussed that in a previous pod. So
exactly.
I will not dredge it up again in detail. But
that one is a YMMV situation, right?
Yeah,
but
it was broadly aimed in the right direction, as opposed to this, which is a complete 180.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, its heart was in the right place, I guess, is a way to put it, and it's definitely not in this move. Like, oh, guess what? We have a false accuser, and it's like, oh, does this stuff happen in real life? Of course it does, but why? Like, why?
If you want to tell that story, tell that story.
Why here? Why now? Who needs this? Like,
And
who needs this?
and
In this
to
show,
go beyond
I truly
that,
don't understand it.
to go beyond that, then okay, we also then have to examine what it actually does accomplish beyond simply, as I say, completely making all of the previous, like, victims that were saved by I and her friends, like, suspect, and, as you say, litigating their accounts. Maybe they exaggerated, all that stuff, which is not helpful at all, by the way, in this kind of story, which is again about getting to how, like, society often covers up the kind of abuses that, like, it's you say, like, the girl that cried rape, like the boy that cried wolf, and often, as has been said in law, when people do make false accusations of rape, it weakens it for people who do need it. And I think that's actually kind of an appalling message for this show to put out by implication after all it's done. That, oh, actually, no, there are some cases where you shouldn't believe them. Like, fuck you. Fuck you, show. Fuck you wrote that.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a poor message. I mean, any examination of the statistics.
Yeah. If
rapists that get caught, of people that come forward, I mean, it's just so just so awfully stacked in favor of men who take advantage of women in this way.
Yeah, it was recently a thing in the UK, actually, which resulted in a government apology for it, because there simply weren't enough going to cases or convictions relative to the instances happening. But anyway, but going back to this, though, like, from a narrative perspective, then it's not about Koito, even though it, like, it brings up this revelation about her, because we don't really get to hear her explain that, why she did it, if it's true, or even deny it if it's false. We get nothing. Sawaki mentions this revelation, and it's again brought up as kind of a flashback thing, but that's all we hear from him in this new material. And you might say to me, oh, hold on, Shads, don't worry, I transferred schools, that's why she doesn't see him anymore. But I'd like to point out that her mother is still dating him.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that she, like, and I think, like, so it's not about him, it's not about, like, how he speaks about this. It's therefore going to be about Ai's reaction to this. What is her reaction to this knowledge? Nothing! That's also what I said before about the problem with this finale, and it comes up with stuff that it does not give any of the characters' reactions to. Like the girls drifting apart, or, the revelation, like, that, oh, the timeline has shifted and they don't know each other. I would be somewhat-ish, maybe kind of little bit okay with this revelation if I was shown to have had to go through the processing of it and what it meant, and ultimately what her conclusion was, whether she believes Sawaki or not. But none of that fucking happens.
I think we got it, but I think we didn't know we had it. Because, like you said, it's situated in the episode, right, when she's in the art gallery and asks him what happened. And there's still a lot of material in the TV show that happens after that. So, like, I guess it's sort of retcons, and we're supposed to go back and be like, okay, so, like, all her behavior from that point forward is, like, her figuring out what to do with that information. And maybe when she tells Momo, like, I don't want to know the truth, or is it Nehru? I can't remember. I don't really want to know what happened. Is her kind of deciding not to believe Sawaki or whatever. Like, but, like, that is work that the show expects us to do, rather than, like, integrating it on its own.
I accept a certain level of intended ambiguity in works. That's good. That enriches a work of art, a text. This is not ambiguity. This is just holes. There is a skeleton of an idea here. Yeah, there's a skeleton of an idea, and there's nothing hung upon it. So even disregarding the moral and ethical implications of throwing into question all of the previous characters' testimonies and experiences, which alone is a, like, slam dunking your own side. Like, it's just the most stupid thing I can think for the person who wrote this show to begin with. Even beyond that, even if I were being as generous as I could possibly be, it still isn't executed properly. It is a completely holistic failure from start to finish, and it was only 3 lines that could have been jettisoned from the show without consequence. I am utterly stunned that whoever wrote all of the more nuanced material of this show prior to this decided to slip this in here at the end. Like I said before, I would believe that some sort of fucking conservative YouTuber who complains about translations wrote this shit.
I know, like, see? See? Swaki didn't do anything. Like, he was set up, like,
I hope
that was all this girl trying to extort him or manipulate him or whatever. And God, like, I mean, Koito just gets fucking just like totally housed, like totally submarined, sideswiped. Like, they just crush her in this, like, kind of rewrite how you're supposed to think about her based on these scummy, shitty revelations that we get. And I mean, there's that whole thing about how Neru calls her a fake friend. And I does sort of begin to re-examine her relationship with Koito at the end of the show. But I mean, I don't know. One of the things I really liked about that was like how, you know, relationships, like you might have relationships with like flawed people that aren't great, people that might not even have your best interests at heart, but like it can still be helpful to both people at certain times in their life. Like, you never know, I guess, what kind of person is gonna save you in some ways. Like, I think Reagan for Mob and Mob Psycho is a great example. I mean, he's a horrible con man, and yet he like helps this kid like find himself in really cool ways. And like, there was like a good germ of an idea there, but again, like you've been saying, like, it's great conceptually, but like, yeah, I don't know. I just hated how Koito just really got
Humps up.
effed over completely.
Yeah, fucks over, I think you mean to say. We can use the full words. We can be full swearing. Like, this is me, like, filter off, kid gloves off. Fuck this shit.
Yeah.
Pissed me off so much that was put in there.
You know, this is a great point by Gogo in chat that, like, you know, so many of the young women in the show, like, it's about them telling their stories.
Yes.
Speaking for themselves, speaking to their accusers. Or no, speaking to their abusers. I don't know how that got mad. What a typo in my brain. They're accusers. They're abusers. And then Koito just gets totally thrown under the bus without getting to speak for herself. And this fucking wonder killer gets to be like, she's just tried to ruin my reputation. She did it at the last school, you know. And then she died. Haha. Like, Jesus.
Question for you, by the way. Depending on how stern and strict you are with the mechanics, if Koiso did indeed not kill herself but just slips, why did she even appear in the other world to begin with?
Right.
But
well, I mean, maybe
that's mine. It's mine, and I don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe
something they should have clarified, though.
Maybe it's if you've been visited by Frill. I'm going to be very glib here. The Suicide Fairy. That's how they sort of present her. It's like,
I'm not disagreeing. I'm not disagreeing. I'm not disagreeing with you.
And then
I'm just trying to
horrible things happen.
Process it.
Yeah.
There is an hourglass spinning in my head.
It's one of the things I didn't like about Frill. You know what I mean? And as much as, I mean, I think, again, like, her character and what happens to her, I think you could extrapolate some cool stuff from some conclusions, but yeah, maybe that's why she's in the Neru's in the other world, because she got a visit from Frill, and that's I did not like how it was like the Akkas are responsible for this because they unleashed the Suicide Fairy on all the poor unsuspecting team girls.
Yeah,
didn't enjoy that.
No. So yeah, that entire thing with Koiso is an absolute clusterfuck. It is one of the singularly worst writing decisions I've seen in anime in a while, since Brand New Animal decided to make it textual that the reason that minorities are violent is because of genetics and not because of environment. That was fucking a travesty. This is up there with that. Because it's making a wider comment about how, oh, actually, all this time, maybe you shouldn't necessarily believe these women,
Mm-hmm.
which is fucking disgusting in my opinion.
It's
And
truly
again,
shameful.
to go back as well, just to the very start of this, I want to again reiterate that stories about, like, for example, where say a character or a person like Sawaki, I say that in terms of role, not in character or personality, but someone like him, who is in a position of authority, who is falsely accused of rape, coercion, whatever, by a woman or even a guy, doesn't even need to necessarily be, a woman, whatever, is falsely accused of committing some sort of heinous crime and must then deal with their reputation being dragged through the mud. That is a valid story to tell, but it needs to be the story you plan to tell from the outset. It can't be something that you just slot in at the last second to completely undercut everything you've done prior to this point.
Wasn't there a story that... What am I thinking of? I feel like we watched something where that kind of...
Wasn't that Old Maidens in your 7th season? Because I know that happened with the character voiced by Tamayo Kurosawa, who I can't remember the name of.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. I agree on all points. This was a heinous decision.
Mm-hmm. All right, over to you, Doc. Have you got a talking point to chuck in to the mix?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've said a lot of the things that I had written down that I was going to say. So...
Okay.
I'll just say fried chicken and throw it back to you.
Oh, God. Okay, let's talk about Nehru.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
Okay, so this is admittedly lesser but similar issue to the whole Sawaki actually is innocent problem.
Oh yeah, it was Shield Hero.
Oh shit! Oh no!
It was Shield Hero.
Okay. This is the point where I have to have my integrity. I have to put my integrity on display, and I will point out that while I thought Shield Hero was like the anime equivalent of, I don't know, flossing with steel wool. It was terrible. It was also boring. I am not ultimately, again, going to say you can't tell the core idea of someone being falsely accused of that crime and having to deal with it. It depends on how you choose to execute it. And if you've wanted an example of how not to do it, I will point to that show. Also, again, because despite everything else and all of its repugnant morality, it's also incredibly fucking dull and stupid. But anyway, so thank you for reminding me of that, Yukinon, and thank you for putting me on the spot there to just point out that I do actually have integrity. I know it's a rare thing for me. I know it's very occasional. Martin, this is a red letter day. But anyway, so let's talk about Nehru. So this is actually conceptually a similar problem to what I just talked about with Sawaki, because it's something that, again, has potential if done differently and properly executed, but also has troubling implications. And I want to get this out of the way right now. There seems to be an implication with the way that people say about how Nehru not acting like a regular person, quote unquote, for lack of a better phrase,
right,
is because she's an AI.
She's so cold.
Because she's an AI.
No heart.
Specifically because she's an AI. Now,
let's apply the lessons from Vivi La Fleurette I song to this. So what do we learn about AI?
No, not a lot in that one either, to be fair. But anyway, the problem I have with that, though, is that if that is given as true, that her cold nature is because she is an AI specifically, in other words, what she has been made to be, what she has been created to be, does that not also then apply equally to Frill, and therefore, by consequence, dilutes the blame or responsibility of the Akkas in her upbringing? That she is faulty or violent or cold or sociopathic because she is an AI? Does that not logically follow, given that that seems to be what Kosubuki is saying about Nehru being like the way she is, as opposed to the fact that she was just raised that way?
So, let me see if I can walk your reasoning back through there. So, the flaws in Nehru's character are just because she's an AI and not because of her. We're saying this is what the show says, that not because of choices she made or the other people made in raising her. And so ergo, Frill the same.
Same,
Um,
or to some extent, like the blame is lessened on the environment versus the genetics, even though it's not genetics, it's something different for AIs and whatever that may be in the show.
right.
So it's tipping the scales away from nurture and more towards nature.
Uh-huh. Well, I mean, in some ways, like that doesn't bother me in terms of Frill because I mean, Frill is just like I just get mad at the Akkas for everything that they're doing. I don't think, I think she does horrible things, of course, but like she's still sort of a tragic figure and misunderstood by them, and their like irresponsible bullshit decision to create life out of sheer boredom and then abandon it basically. But I hear what you're saying. I mean, certainly the dangerous road to go down if it's a universal thing.
Yeah, but this also, just as a side point, if Neru is indeed an AI, which by the way, this came so completely out of left field and raises a ton of questions. Like Kotobuki is in the one who died, the one we saw in Neru's episode, who was in the tube before she fell inside. She just made her. Like that was the Kotobuki that made her. The Kotobuki we see in these episodes is from a parallel world. How did she get over it? Couldn't tell you. Moving on. Don't need to worry about that.
She's
no
just
one knows.
Couldn't exist. Two of me couldn't exist in the same place. Keep on trucking. Don't ask questions. Just go. Read your line. Keep going.
Sup, homies? Like the other question I'd then ask is, we got to see like how involved the process was with making Frill at the very least. Like, there was a lot to that. Did Kobuki just literally fart out a fucking AI out of nowhere? Never mind. I should point out that while Kobuki is a genius and probably a polymath, like she was a psychologist. Yeah. She's not a fucking like tech bro.
She's not like a robotics engineer.
Yeah. Why did she even do it? Like this is the other thing that bothers me as well, because also by implication it damns her as a character. Like Nehru spoke of her with like a lot of reverence and fondness. Indeed, what we saw of her when she was in the fight with that fucking Harvey Birdman attorney at law motherfucker. Right. whatever his name was, Falco from Star Fox.
Yes.
Like they had a lot of fondness for each other, but it turns out no, actually she just made Nehru for shits and giggles. And beyond all of the confusion, all of the unanswered questions, the fact it's throwing more questions on the pile in a finale that is ostensibly meant to wrap everything up. Yeah, that's how you can tell this is a great finale, that it just leaves you asking more rather than less. And okay, I'll be fair, there are times when a finale can allow ambiguity in its ending, but not in the more functional stuff like this where it's just throwing shit out of left field.
Right, that's no inkling that this was a thing or even possible, or no foreshadowing. It's in fact, it's a Warui Deshou move, Shadon, because I think it's so bad that it comes back around to being good because it's hilarious. There is no fucking reason for this to happen. Zero. It contributes nothing. I mean, I don't think it I don't necessarily think it hurts very much. I mean, there are some bad, some weird implications, but it's just, I don't know. It'd be like, if they were like, gosh, I don't know, if they were like, Rika is really an alien. I mean,
I will turn out to be an AI because the name is I.
You're exactly it was just funny. I just had to laugh. And then, I mean, the whole thing with Eru, I don't really have strong opinions on, because I was kind of
like, who the fuck she is.
I was kind of scrambling at that point to kind of follow what was happening.
Why the fuck should I care about Eru at all? We know that she tried to stab her sister in the back, but she has been, in some sense, like Koito, just even lesser in that she's not a character who exists for her own sake. She's a character who exists narratively to serve another character, this being Nehru in this case, as Koito was to Ai.
Yeah.
And so the thing that boggles my brain about this, as you rightly point out, is what does any of this serve? What is the narrative intent behind revealing that Nehru is an AI? Because it doesn't even gel with what her character has been struggling with. She's wanting to find out why her sister did that. If anything, it would make more sense if Iru was the AI and not Nehru. But also, this means that some of the stuff we've seen previously is also a complete like work of fiction, because there's mention in the very recap that's in this same fucking episode of the fact that Neru and Kotobuki, for that matter, were the products of the Japan Plati group.
Right.
You know, they were bred. You know, they weren't made in
yeah.
They weren't made in the fucking bathtub. But then again, that whole timeline seems wonky as fuck, given that it was the Akas who came up with Japan Plati, but they like are barely like in their 20s. So how the fuck does this make any sense?
Everyone's super young. Oh, they're all baby geniuses.
Honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, what the fuck was that even? He's an AI.
It just makes Kotobuki look like a complete bitch, basically. Oh, I made her. I don't care about it. I just made her for a laugh. I was bored one day.
Save the real Neru. She's being tempted by
Frill. And Frill's like only appearance in the episode. What a shocking state of affairs. The biggest question mark in the entire show, the character who we know the least about and deserves the most attention in this finale and its original material, has maybe a minute of screen time. She appears for less time than the average fucking YouTube advert. Person! Woo!
I don't know why they did that. I don't know why they did that. I mean, it just seems like its own full season of anime. She's an AI, and like here's what we want to say about that.
They wrote ideas on little strips of paper and put them in a box. And then once they were done, they just hit each other. Everyone just hit each other over the head with a giant.
I mean, it really this is going to be. It's weird saying this about something so short. This really should have been cut. This was not an idea to include in this.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
In this thing, it would have been. Well, I was going to say it would have been better, but at least this part made me laugh.
God.
Anyway.
What a clown shoes affair, this, honestly. Real, a Mickey Mouse operation for the ages. Man.
And then in the end, you know, she wants to save Neru. And so she's right back with the Akas, and they're like, yo, what's up, girl? It's been forever. How you doing? It's like, great. Super. This is
give us money for reasons, because that's going to solve our problems.
Buy some eggs.
Yeah, the egg game, which was really the egg game the egg game that was really only an incentive just to get you to join. It's like, I mean, I suppose maybe they need to do the egg thing to lure out Frill's fucking quartet, but who cares?
Yeah,
who gives a shit at this point? Like, the creators clearly don't care. I mean, I say that, and that's probably a bit harsh. And when I say that, I mean specifically the people in charge of writing the story. Because I know that, like, the creators who, like, animated it cared about it. They cared enough that so much that one of them, again, I must stress, put himself in hospital twice, and was actually proud of the fact that he did. I remember reading that on Twitter, that he was proud of the fact that he was able to work so hard on it. He ended up in hospital, like, I'm going to keep doing this. I believe in this project. So, and if I were him, I'd be violent seeing how this has gone, because it's honestly.
Sorry, go ahead. You finish.
Because it's really, again, like, say, just like the end of BNA for me, where it preaches one thing, but in reality tells us another, in such a way that it's honestly, God, it is repugnant. It is morally and ethically repugnant, both in terms of how it was created and what it's trying to say in the very end. And that's, as I say, to go back to the beginning, why I have no interest in watching a season 2 if it comes around. I don't care if they had like 2 years to make it, they were paid $100,000 a piece as a minimum, and had like a team of 200 people to create it in the most like comfortable conditions they can make. You had your shot, Wonder Egg. You had the chance to do this properly. Or, even if they had to operate under the limited time constraints they had, they could have done anything else. So, no, kindly go fuck yourself, show. You've pissed away all your goodwill with me. I have no interest in seeing any more of it. Jog the fuck on.
Just try to think about Tomozaki-kun.
You know what's staggering? Now that you've said that, you know what's astounding to me? I cannot believe I'm going to say this, but of those 3 shows, that is, or rather, well, I mean, not those 3 shows, because we didn't do Wonder Egg in the same block as Tomozaki and Vivi. Mm-hmm. But if you ask me to compare to place my bets on which between Wonder Egg and Tomozaki, like which of the 2, based on my opinion of the first 3 episodes, would end up would have the strongest ending. Mm-hmm. It would have taken me all of half a second at most, and that's probably because I'm rubbing my nose or something and distracted, to say it would have been Wonder Egg. But it turns out, in reality, the complete opposite is true. Because Tomozaki ended pretty damn well. It was a rock-solid ending and a substantial increase in quality versus its beginning, where I just thought it was like, Harem 101, something that I could easily replicate by just looking for bargain basement shit on Steam and let it play itself. But no, it turned out to be a rock solid ending that defied its own pitfalls. Whereas this is just atrocious. So
I don't think it's all bad in terms of the whole show or anything, but
anyway,
a bad decision, a weird decision. Yeah, I mean, even though the insect ladies were introduced into the show relatively late, and at that point, mentally, I'm already kind of juggling a lot. So I'm like, I don't need another thing. Looking back on how they were presented, they certainly did deserve better, because they were scary. I mean, they looked scary. It was really gross when they opened their mouth. They did horrible things, and perhaps most importantly, the egg crew was animated in such a way to be really afraid of them. Like, you believed that, yeah, these bugs are striking fear into their heart. They must be incredibly menacing, and the music was great during those scenes. So,
yep.
Yeah, it's just a shame that they just didn't have
time. This is probably a good point as any, actually, for us to wrap up by answering the final question, which comes from Emily Rand, who, of course, previously guested with us to cover Wonder Egg. And if you want to go check out our work, it's at AJ4 on Twitter. Go do have a look. But anyway, the question goes as follows. How much does the ending change your perception of the series as a whole? Do you think it's possible to compartmentalize the beginning of the series from how it ended? And would you recommend it to other people? Ooh, that's a spicy meatball of a question.
It's a doozy. Who goes
first? This is a doozy. You?
Okay.
You could have just said, "Why don't you go first, Shads?" And you could have had me. But I was like, "No, you left it open. I'm gonna pass this hot potato back to you."
Fine. No, I have an answer. It is. I think, for my part, that this special, while there's things I enjoyed about it, I mean, certainly it made not great writing decisions. And I think you could recommend this show to people and just lop this off. Quite honestly, you could just say, you don't have to watch it. I mean, if you really, really want to, I guess you could, but you really, probably get more out of it if you just watch the 12 episodes. That happens with a lot of TV. There's a remarkable amount of TV specials and OAVs and net things that people just don't consume or whatever. This could be put in a pile along with those as here's some content or whatever. But I think the show as a whole, I mean, it's certainly not perfect. It's quite messy, and but it really, really goes for it. I mean, I think it's quite an audacious show, as I said in our episode 12 thing, and I would recommend it to, I think, certain people, and say hey, the ending of this, it might not wrap it. You're not going to be able to create a Fextra Life site based on what you find out, but just kind of go with the emotional journey, and you'll get something out of this. I mean, I think that there's a lot to be had there. So I think that the special doesn't like affect how I view the rest of the show. I would recommend it to people. I still think the show is a good show. I think at times a great show. I think it ascends, its highs are unbelievably high. But, you know, depending on who you are, of course, like, you know, it's going to stumble a little bit at times, but, you know, that's okay. I still think it's a good show.
All right. Where do I begin with this? Where do I begin with my thoughts on this? So, I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm not going to say that the entire show is completely devoid of merit as a result of this. Although I do think the fact that, as I say, like I said about the Sawaki revelation, does really hurt like my feeling about the show in general, like about my confidence in the writers to handle this material. But I am in agreement with what has been said in chat, what you have said, which is you could treat the finale, episode 13, as vestigial and just ignore it.
Ooh, good word use, vestigial.
It is vestigial. It is bad fanfic, in my opinion. That is the best way to describe it. Because it even includes what often bad fanfics have, which is an unnecessary recap of everything.
I mean, I really like dislike using fanfic as like a slur or a pejorative, but
I call it bad fanfic. That's the distinction.
Yeah, right. But it does that thing, right, where it's like, okay, here's my continuation that is so totally different in spirit from the original. Like, here's like this crazy weird decision that undercuts everything that the original show was about.
Yeah. Whether or not I can compartmentalize it or not, well, I'm going to say I actually probably can't, because I say I don't want to watch, you know, the potential season 2. There's no point, in my opinion. They've blown it. But I would otherwise recommend the first 12 episodes because it's still, despite everything, until the point the writers, like, I don't know, had some sort of visitation by, like, you know, aliens or whatever that screwed with their brains. It still did something that I think is a fine message and a fine thing for like this material to do, which is it tackles the topic, as I've said before, of, you know, the trauma of young women, societal, like, you know, pressures and exploitation and cruelty towards them. It gives them, and it treats them,
right?
Yeah. It treats them also, at least until this finale, with empathy. It treats these stories as all of them as things that people were never allowed to say. All of the victims were never allowed to speak openly. It gives voices to people who tragically never got the chance to, like, you know, say what they say and, you know, avert their own deaths. That still has value. That still has worth. But I also think that there's no getting away from the fact that the finale has completely blown it. I don't want to go back and watch any more of Wonder Egg. I don't want to go back and watch any more of it in the future, because I can't get that thing out of my brain now about what Sawaki says and all of its vile implications.
Oh shit! I almost just think this is like a weird epilogue and not even the finale. I think the finale might be episode 12, and maybe this is just my preconditioning of treating TV specials, because, like, again, so many anime have these, like, additional, like, you know, buy the Blu-ray and get, like, this fucking 15-minute thing that, you know, is most of the time, like, doesn't really have implications for the larger story. This certainly did, but I just think
not the implications I was hoping for.
No, I know, bad ones. But I think it's just like hardwiring in my brain in terms of, like, the taxonomy, like what I view, like how important, or even, I don't know, canonical, right, things are. Like the TV special, I mean, I would put, like, on the lower end of that. So yeah, it's almost it's just a bizarre epilogue.
I'll still recommend the first 12 episodes, as long as you don't watch the finale, and as long as you operate under the, like, pretense that you won't get a proper conclusion to the wider, like, to basically anything but I's story, I would say.
Right.
Because I's story concludes well in episode 12, in my opinion. It concludes really, really well, for that matter. That alone, like, I think is probably worth the price of admission. And that doesn't mean like that certain individual episodes and moments aren't worth. I mean, let's also just not be fair here. Like, let's go back to Momoe's episode and the fact that it openly has a trans character in it. Like, that's worth something, you know. It has, and when I say that, it openly has a trans character in it whom is treated with empathy and sympathy, save for some stuff I mentioned on our previous podcast about fortune and mechanical implications. But
Yeah,
I'm going to ignore that.
Listen to that.
I'm going to ignore that. For the point of just bringing it up here, like, there are good things in this show. So yeah, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but don't, for the love of fuck, watch episode 13.
But also, when you don't drink the bathwater.
No, don't do that either. I mean, when you look on Funimation and you go from episode 12, which has an average of 5 stars, to an average of 3 stars for episode 13, you can tell.
Man,
you can just tell.
It is listed as episode 13, isn't it, in Funimation? Which is not.
Yep.
I guess you could quibble about like the labeling. Yeah, that is going to lead people to think like, well, here's the next episode. Like, if you come to this like 2 years from now and you're like, God, like when I was coming up in anime fandom, people were talking about Wonder Egg. Let me check this out. It's really good.
That being said, Doc, what I do find funny is that because of this recap, is the fact that the recap is 3/5 of the episode. Maybe people will think the whole thing is recap and turn off before they finish it.
Yeah. I'm like, why is this episode 13?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, though the Yukinon, you bastard. In chat, Jag Games or Gams, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name. I certainly did one of the two ways mispronounce it. Asks, do you think that Wonder Egg actually portrays trauma in a good way?
We've covered this in the previous podcast, so I'd go back and look at them for more detail, to be honest.
I would. I mean, I think the short answer for both of us is yes. And if you want us to like explicate, on that, like we spend a lot of time talking about it.
They're all on YouTube. They're all on this channel.
On the other episode.
Yeah. Forth, would-be digital wanderer.
Yeah, we have a playlist of our 3 or 4 other, Wonder Egg podcasts where we talk about it. And I mean, I think, again, yes. I think it's pretty honest and can be, it's pretty unflinching when it comes to a lot of it. But yeah, if you want a deep dive on our thoughts, check that out. And no, Grizzly says it was advertised as the final episode. Yeah, I mean, I didn't look at the advertising. Like, I just so that's totally a fair point to bring up. Like, again,
the fuck you fooled me.
I didn't look at the advertising.
My ass.
I just like pulled up Anime News Network and Mao, and it's like, here's the TV special. But again, I think, I mean, it has to have been advertised that way because I think that's how most people were going in and looking at it. And that was the expectations, it was like, and boy, this final episode, it had a lot to live up to, man. I mean, people were really wanting to type a lot of threads and it just wasn't interested in doing that. So I totally understand. Yeah, no, I know, more threads. And so I totally understand people not enjoying it for that reason. Again, as I certainly strongly disliked some like retconning that happened in this episode, in this special. But I think that there was a lot of a lot's a strong word because there's just not a lot of material. There were good moments, and there were positives here, and I think it smelled like Wonder Egg, which surprisingly enough, I mean, for me, counted for a lot.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have nothing more to add. That's all of our questions exhausted. Thank you to Emily Rand for chucking that in. Shall we move on to racing this somehow?
Okay. Let's do it.
God help me. Do you want to go first on this one, or shall I?
I was just talking. You go first.
Fine. I am going to give this batch of episodes. What the fuck am I talking about? This episode, if you want to call it that, if you want to be extremely generous, in the same way I say, like, if my grandmother had wheels, she'd be a fucking wagon. If I wanted to call it that, I would give it 1.25 out of 5 inexplicable AI retcons. At times, this episode felt like watching scorpions fuck.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait. That is a very specific reference. Have you engaged in that activity to?
No.
I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, maybe you're watching a nature special and it's like, David Attenborough's like, and the copulation commences. I don't know.
Oh God! I mean, I have
1.25, huh?
I have nothing else to add beyond
the lowest you've ever given anything.
I
think it might be
down there. It's down there. I think I gave one of the BNA episodes a similar one. I know I gave one of the Frank's episodes a similar one. It's broadly in that ballpark, but honestly, this whole thing was just. It would have been better if it was never made. In my opinion, it would have been better if it did not exist.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree with you. Yeah, sure.
So yeah, 1.25 scorpions fucking. Let's go.
There's a lot of things in this world that I don't think are a waste of time, but will be just as fine as not with them not existing.
This was the equivalent of like watching an anime equivalent of watching someone decide to piss on an electrified rail line. It was incredibly stupid, ill-advised, and it just ended up, ending itself.
Yeah. So I was gonna come in. I was thinking when I started the pod that I would give this 3 stars, but just thinking back on the Sawaki Koito retcon business, I am going to give this special. It's going to be 2.5 inexplicable AIs out of 5. Yeah, I mean it's good stuff brought down by really, well, I say good stuff. Some nice moments, well-made thing in terms of the craft rather than the overarching story. Really brought down by some poor writing decisions. And just ended up being like a sort of a hamster wheel of a thing and I include the recap in this. I mean, I think it's so much of the runtime that just to be like, I don't care about this, it doesn't factor into my score at all is, I mean, like, to me, to judge this whole episode fairly, you have to, like, how was the recap? Like, was it, executed well? Did it do its job? And I think by and large, I mean, I liked it and thought it succeeded in what it set out to do for me. So Shadon's being too generous with that score.
Yeah. I mean, to answer your point there about the recap, I did factor that in, and all I could think to myself was that was 25 minutes of a 45-minute show, which, like, the events of the show were still fresh in my mind. I even rewatched episode 12 before this to get a flavor of how I felt when that episode concluded and how I felt going into this.
Mm-hmm.
It is 25 minutes that could have been spent elsewhere or just jettisoned entirely. The fact that I honestly felt like at one point I was nodding off because it was like, I don't care about this. I know all of this. This narration does not add anything new. It is explaining stuff I already know. Like,
you have a better memory than me. I was just finding it very useful. It's like, oh yeah, this happened. Oh, I loved that part. I remember how I felt when this happened. So it's, yeah, different.
I was just drumming my fingers on my desk, and
okay.
That's never a good sign. And then I was flipping the anime off with my fingers when it decided to drop the Sawaki revelation on us. Thanks for that. So yeah, probably one of the worst things I have ever seen covering Warui Deshou. And I am absolutely saddened that I had to say that about an episode of One Direct Priority of all things. If I'd been saying that about Tomazaki, I'd have probably been actually less angry and less terse about it because I'd have thought, well, it's just plain to type. But no, it turns out like what I thought was going to be one of the more ambitious, more nuanced, more like intriguing and thought-provoking shows of the year. Well, I guess it went away for 3 months and just decided to sniff glue and then come back. Thanks.
Was this gosh. So this was a winter show, right? This aired January to March.
It was the coldest fucking winter of anime. This show
Winter
now
is coming. Oh, when did it air?
That's a great comment by like much like Game of Thrones. This also ended badly at the end.
The TV show. The books will never end. We're never getting the end of that until
they should have emulated that. Should have gone full George R. R. Martin. I'm not doing it anymore. Fuck a lot of you.
It's never happening until he dies, and then Brandon Sanderson steps in. It's like, watch me, motherfuckers. I write a book every 2 months. Fuck you,
Branderson.
I know. Yeah, that the man who finished the Wheel of Time, right, post Robert Jordan's death, I believe. Okay, so we have done it. We made it through. All of Wonder Egg Priority. God. Well, look, it's been a rough time the last few weeks for you. Like you said, anime not loving you back, despite you wanting to love it. But
I'm trying.
We're about to get some new shit to cover. So, despair not.
I'm gonna get isekai. I know it.
What?
I know it. It's gonna be an isekai, and it's gonna be painful.
It's not gonna be.
It's like sticking giant crabs on your nipples. It's gonna be fucking terrible. I just know it. I don't have any hope anymore. I'm devoid of hope and faith. It's just gonna be garbage. Whatever it. I don't know. Maybe our patrons will pick something nice. To be fair.
Yeah.
I should have pointed.
I mean, like they I think I will cryptically say that the future of what we're going to cover, perhaps there's reason to be hopeful.
Yep. You can always mention in chat what shows you look forward to season. I have honestly not yet taken the time to review what shows are coming up. Everything I've seen, like from the discussion coming out on like social media feeds like ANN and A&M Writers, has been fairly middling. Like it nothing feels like it truly sticks out at the moment, save for maybe Kakuje's Shoujo, whatever it's called. I don't know. I can't recall the pronunciation of it. But I mean, we went into this season just gone, and that was we had like so much good stuff. Heck, there was stuff we didn't even cover, like Odd Taxi, which has been universally lauded. Like it was a stacked season last season.
That's multiple people have suggested that. If you would like us to cover Odd Taxi, subscribe to the Patreon and vote for it when the polls come up.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So yeah, you're right. Maybe there is something to be hopeful for. We will see soon enough. The polls are already open, by the way, people listening. They will remain open until Sunday at 2000 hours BST.
The polls are up. I didn't know the polls were up. I knew suggestions.
Oh no! Sorry. I've gained my words mixed up. The suggestion threads are up for you to choose.
Yep.
Yeah. The suggestion box is up. The polls not up yet. They will go up the following Monday.
The polls are constructed based on your suggestions. So if you'd like to see something on the polls, again, retros is good too. I mean, we covered Tomozaki after it aired. We covered, I think, Rakugo Shinju years after it aired. And delightfully, we covered that. I mean, that was what a banger! I'm so glad we got to watch that.
I'm mostly clean winner, save for the fact that its final episode also cast an unfortunate implication of one of its female characters. Man. Stop doing that, anime! Stop doing it!
I don't even remember. I watch too much media or consume too much media and just have a bad. So things are just leaving my brain. Details. I can remember how I felt about a thing. I quite liked Rakugo.
Kanatsu fucked a 70-year-old man.
Oh boy.
She likes her men like she likes her wine in a dusty cellar and old. Doc is regretting coming
How
back to
dare
the podcast there.
What a time to return. All right. Is there any other housekeeping to take care of before we get out of here?
Baby.
Well, on that note, Shadon, if people would like to converse with you online and talk about how you're wrong, the anime is fantastic. That's better than it's ever been. There's no time like the present to be an anime fan. How would they do that?
You can start by tearing off your @ key from your keyboard and throwing it in the bin.
Okay.
Do not at me. Do not come at me. But if you really insist, you can find me at Shadon1010 on Twitter. You can tell me about all the good animes out there that are worth checking out. You might even convince me there's a good isekai out there. Good fucking luck with that. Although, I'll be fair, I know that there might be some decent ones like Villainess and Spider and whatnot. Although apparently Spider's got to dog shit lately as well. So at this point, whatever. I'm just going to be nihilistic. I'm going to be, I'm just consumed by dread. I'm going to drink my way out of this hole I'm in. But yeah, you can talk to me there if you feel so inclined.
I'm going to say that we will cover at some point. I feel it in my bones. The best isekai ever made in Japanese animation.
Monopoly the anime?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
The protagonist becomes a hat. Must become a property magnate.
They
realizes the corruption. It realizes the corruption of capitalism and the fact that Monopoly, will send him home, but ultimately will destroy the world he is in.
Yeah.
That's my pitch for Monopoly the anime, by the way.
You have your the beach episode is the community chess where you win like a beauty contest, and it has all the anime trappings and tropes.
That £10 has not risen with inflation. I'll tell you that.
It's made by Osamu Tezuka. If you look at his, what's the guy's name? God damn it, I can't remember the character. I think the character might be named different things, but if you look at Tezuka's star system, you'll notice that the Monopoly guy features quite frequently. The Monopoly guy is a character in many of his great works. So
wow.
So there you go. Vision of Escaflowne is the fantastic. It was before isekai was a popular term to use about animations. That was an anime that is amazing, and it's just fantastic piece of anime that I'm sure we'll cover at some point. Watch him say Grimgar. No, Grimgar. No, Grimgar not fantastic. Grimgar is okay. I liked parts of Grimgar. I don't even know if you could. Is Grimgar an isekai? I guess. Anyway,
sounds pretty.
Everything
sounds both grim. It sounds both grim and gar. I don't know.
Yeah. Remember when Gar was a thing? People would talk about Gar. Does anyone ever use Gar as a descriptor anymore about anything? I feel like Gurren Lagann was the last anime people were like, "This is so Gar, like manly," or whatever. We're rambling, so we should probably sign off then. I'm at the Subtle Doctor on Twitter. You can tweet at the podcast at Warui Deshou. You can feel free to support us on Patreon. What happened there? I don't know.
You said you like your own version of a gar then.
Exactly. You can support us on Patreon if you want to. Lots of cool benefits there if you do. You can also help us defeat the mighty algorithm by subscribing over at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all the places. Leave comments, give us likes and shares, etc. Again, help us claim victory over the dreaded JRPG boss that is the algorithm. And with that said, this has been Warui Deshou Stream of Thought for this week. He's Shadon. I'm the Subtle Doctor. Embrace each other, everyone, to the end of the universe.
Good night.
Bring back the